Welcome to potentially the juiciest wrap-up that will ever be filmed on this channel. There are going to be some shockers, there are going to be some great books. I have some thoughts, and yes, let's get into them. So I'm actually going to start with the DNFs because I feel that I have to tell you about the books that I have DNF'd this month. I think you're going to be really shocked. All three of them were anticipated releases for this year. I think all of them? No, two of them are currently out and one of them has yet to be released. So I'll start off with that one, I guess. That is Penance by Eliza Clark, and this was a DNF. Oh gosh, shocking, I know. This is marketed and it's made a big deal of the fact that this is kind of multi-layered, multi-format, so it includes newspaper articles, third-person narrative, interviews, that sort of thing. And actually that only made the reading experience worse because it took the overlong, overwritten lack of editing and it added to that chaotic, confused mess and made the whole thing 10 times worse because we are chopping and changing not only between different formats, but we don't have a central protagonist. We don't have clear, concise storytelling. We just basically have a huge unedited mess on our hands, and it's really underwhelming. I wouldn't be surprised if this does absolutely nothing this year on the book prize lists. Who knows, maybe me saying that means it's going to suddenly win the Booker, but I doubt it. I think it's a hot mess. It's a shame because I was going in expecting to love it. I liked the fact that it was true crime, I liked the fact that it was Eliza Clark, I thought she was going to do great things, given a little bit more writing experience, but no, this is a huge fail for me. The next one on the DNF pile was actually Caleb Azumah Nelson's Small Worlds, and I still can't believe that I'm actually saying that, because this has potential. I've been looking forward to this book for the last 2 years. Ever since I knew that it was coming out in May 2023, I've been looking forward to it, and so the fact that this is a DNF is beyond words for me. Where to start with this? Okay, so it's not written in second person, which was one of the main aspects of Open Water that I really enjoyed. So this is not your second person narrative, number one. Number two, this is told by a child narrator, like they are 16, 17 years old, which is slightly on the too young side for me. They're school age, they're living with their parents, they're going to school, they're having high school dramas, not fitting in, girlfriends, friends, aunties, cousins, like they're children, and that's very apparent, and I am very much not a child, and so I don't get on well with child narrators anyway, and so just their issues and what they're going through is just so far removed from me that it's just not entertaining or enjoyable to me. I don't need or want to listen to, you know, a couple of kids going through high school. I mean, it's the same the world over. So I did not like that aspect of it. And the third and final reason is Caleb Azumah Nelson, through his interviews, makes it very clear that he is writing for Black youth, that he is trying to be the role model and fill the gaps in a very, especially in England, the English curriculum is very white when it comes to literature, and so he is trying to bolster and be an inspiration and give voice to Black youth in London, essentially, and elsewhere in the UK, but I mean, he writes about Ghanaian Londoners, and so he is writing for the people who identify with the characters in his novel, and fair enough, I am not a Black youth living in London, like that's just not who I am, and so he's not writing for me, and fair enough, like you don't have to write for everybody. He makes it very clear in his interviews that is his goal, that is his purpose. Whilst that's not to say you can't enjoy, you know, literature outside of what you identify as, what I'm saying is that the people he's referencing, the archetypes he's referencing, the Ghanaian auntie that in Small Worlds, that I'm sure everybody who knows that woman in their life would be chuckling and chortling with laughter at, because it is so accurate to, you know, that archetype that people have in their lives that I just have no frame of reference for. I have no idea. I've never met some like that sort of Ghanaian auntie. I don't know. I don't have literally any frame of reference for the characters that he is talking about. Having, you know, a lot of cousins, a lot of kind of like intergenerational family living is not something that is part of my frame of reference at all. So for me, I very much feel like an outsider looking in. I don't feel like I can relate or connect to the characters in this novel, and that's totally fine. This novel is important for so many different reasons, and I'm not saying on any level that this is a terrible book and I don't recommend this book. I absolutely recommend this book. I absolutely think you should read it. I am one person. I am a drop in the ocean. You know, this book will be absolutely beloved, and it will be funny and entertaining and just so beloved by so many people. I am just, as I say, one voice, and the fact that I DNF this book is no reflection on the book itself. It's just for those 3 reasons that I have mentioned. I just decided not to continue with it because I was not enjoying it. It wasn't entertaining me. And so that brings us on to the 3rd DNF, which is Mr. Mister, which again is such a shock because I absolutely loved his first novel, In This Mad and Furious City, and this one really rubbed me up the wrong way. This one is incredibly inflammatory, I feel. Whether the author meant it that way or whether it's just the way I'm taking it, I'm not sure, but this really did not sit well with me at all. So we meet a guy who is currently being interrogated in a detention centre in the UK for basically having gone to Syria to be a terrorist and has tried to re-enter the UK because he's from what does he call it? The East End, which is East London for any of you who don't know, and he's from a low-income immigrant family. The thing that rubbed me up the wrong way about it was that we were meant to feel sorry for this guy. Like somehow, being a low-income immigrant, growing up in England as a child within that community, somehow that's supposed to make us feel sorry for somebody who has gone out to Syria to incite violence, fear, terror and death in other people, and we're supposed to sympathise for this guy because he's from a low-income background. Like, no, I'm sorry, there are plenty of people who come from low-income backgrounds, immigrant, non-immigrant, living in East London, who don't go on to be terrorists. I found that the connection between, he's a low-income immigrant, to, okay, that's somehow supposed to justify him going off to kill people in Syria. I did not get that at all, and it was not something that I think is condonable. That's just not. There are millions of people who grow up in poverty who aren't psychopaths. Like, there are millions of people who grow up in immigrant communities who don't go and destroy people. That isn't a thing. And so I think that either the author just got this really wrong and he doesn't actually believe that. I really hope he doesn't believe that. But yeah, this rubbed me up so much the wrong way that I had to just put it down and be really angry about it. I didn't like that the author was pushing us, was 100% it wasn't obscure, it wasn't ambiguous. He wanted you to feel sorry for this guy. And I was like, no, absolutely not. There is no excuse. And I couldn't stand it. I thought it was despicable. So that brings us on to the actual books then. And I realised that I have not yet told you my stats for the month. So should we start with stats? I read 6 books in total this month. That's not including the DNFs. My average star rating was 3.67, which all of you who have followed my channel since the beginning know how devastating that number is, because I am trying to get my average star rating for the year 4 stars and above on Goodreads, and so 3.67 has brought my average down to 3.89. So how I'm going to crawl my way back from this for the next 6 months, I have no idea, but I'm going to give it my best shot. For those of you who watched my reading vlog, you will know that it's because of David Diop's new novel, which I rated 2 stars, and that dragged down my average rating hard. But 17% of what I read was translated, which was the David Diop novel. 17% of my reads this month were by new to me authors, and the gender balance, I think for the first time ever, was 50-50, so that's pretty great. So I will start with Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. This is the 17% new to me author. This is where that came from, because I have never read a book by her before. This came onto my radar when it was nominated for the Canada Reads Prize, and I'm so glad I picked it up. Jem over at Gem of Books was also really excited to hear that I would be reading this month, because I believe it's one of her most recent favourite reads, and I have to say I totally agree with her. Jem, absolutely 5 stars, just absolutely great. I love the fact that it was multi-perspective. I think we follow 5 children. Well, they were children, but we follow them as adults actually, and it's about the ramifications and the impacts that the Indian schools in Canada had on them as adults, and their adult lives and forming relationships and getting work. When they turn 16, 17, the kind of nun puts them on a bus and just pays for the bus ticket and just sends them to a city, and they're just kind of having to make their way in the world with no help, no support, having spent their entire life in a residential school, and they're just kind of thrust out into the world with absolutely no warning. One of them was told the morning of her journey that she was leaving. Writing, it was so compelling, it was fast, it was beautifully written. I have absolutely no bad things to say about this book. It was fantastic. I knew it was going to be good. I had a feeling all year that it was going to be one of my favourites, and it absolutely is. So yeah, Five Little Indians gets 5 stars. The next book that I want to talk to you about is Cuddy by Benjamin Myers. I'm a Benjamin Myers fan, but I have to admit this one didn't work for me. Whilst I really hope that it has a shot for this year's Booker, because it is so experimental and it is quirky to say the least, but did not work for me. I gave it 3 stars in total, and this is basically, I don't know what it's following, to be honest. There are 3 different timelines. One of them is told purely in, you know, when you get someone like gives a 1 sentence description on a blurb, and they say, I don't know, Marianne Keyes thinks it's fantastic, or The Guardian says, you know, it's their best book of the year, or, you know, that people are quoted on the back of books. So imagine that, but imagine that in a book for like 20 pages straight. That's what we're talking about. So it's basically references. So, and you have the name of the reference underneath. And as you can see, it's pretty hard to even really describe to you, because there is no narrative thread really. There's no protagonist. There isn't really a plot. I mean, the plot is very loose, and as I say, there are 3 different, I want to say storylines, but they're so loose that it kind of isn't. And the body of St. Cuthbert is kind of slowly progressing towards its final resting place, which I believe was in Durham Cathedral, or Dunolm as it's called in the book. And I really wanted to like this. I thought it was going to be kind of like The Last Kingdom, that is also set in Northumbria. But alas, no. I really struggle with any book that isn't character-based plot, and this is there is no recognisable plot. There's no recognisable protagonists. There's nothing to sink your teeth into. It's just, if you like literary challenges, if you like things that are being daring and different, then pick this up. But if you like similar kind of books to me, and you kind of get lost in anything that is just too abstract, then give this the widest possible berth, because you will not get on with this book. The next one was a little bit of a fun surprise. This was Janice Hallett's The Alperton Angels, and I actually really got on well with The Appeal. I didn't bother picking up Twyford Code because Lauren from Lauren and the Books really did not like it, so I thought maybe not. But The Alperton Angels, it has that same format to it of you are detecting with our protagonist. It's made up of texts, emails, as well as conversations, third person. It's a mixture of everything going on, and I really enjoyed that as a nice crime format in The Appeal, and she does it well again here. It's kind of becoming Janice Hallett's brand at this point to write in that way. What was interesting to me was that this was based around a cult, and we slowly unpeel the layers as to what happened in this sort of mass suicide as part of the cult. It was interesting. It certainly passed the time and got 3 stars from me, so not a bad book at all. Solid 3 stars, very happy with it. Next up is potentially my favourite book of the month, and this is When We Were Orphans by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I read for my Kazuo video where I rated every single one of his novels. So go and check the video out if you haven't already. This is my favourite Kazuo, kind of spoiler for that video, but it's my favourite Kazuo. I thought it was so great. This is character-based plot. We follow Christopher Banks as he goes from child playing detectives with his friend to his parents going missing as a boy, and him being hoofed off to English boarding school by his uncle, him growing up in England and becoming the detective that he played as a character with his kind of childhood best friend. And then he kind of has this sort of longing, this missing in his life, this nostalgia for his childhood and finding out where his parents went and why they disappeared. And so he goes back to try and solve their disappearance as this sort of very well recognised and well respected detective. This is very subtle. There is just enough plot to keep you going. A bit like Damon Galgut's writing, it is quiet, it is humble, but it is also kind of insidious. There's something dark, there's something not quite right. It's unsettling but beautiful at the same time. This is very much character based. You are so invested in Christopher Banks. There's this moment where he's going through a tunnel and it's all very transformative and ethereal and dreamlike and wonderful. I found this so escapist. I can still see the world and feel like I'm in it with him. The whole thing was just an absolute delight and a joy to read. This is one of those books that remind me why I read, and the fact that I am such an avid, passionate reader is because you find hidden gems like this that I would not have picked up, I don't think, if I hadn't been reading to finish all of his books for the Kazuo video. But wow, what a novel, what a writer, and I just absolutely thought it was excellent, exceptional. So that's that one. I don't think you could get any higher praise than that. And that takes us on then to the final two that I read for my reading vlog, which I posted it I think a week or so ago. It was when I was over in Nusa Penida for the weekend with my friend. So go and check that video out if you haven't already. I go into more extensively my thoughts on Yellowface and David Diop's new novel, The Door of No Return, both of which I read in their entirety during that weekend. Yellowface I enjoyed more than Diop. Diop I rated 2 stars and Yellowface I rated 4 stars. Yellowface I thought was good. As I explain in my vlog to a greater extent, R F Kuang isn't winning any literary prizes for her writing. The writing's fine, it's readable, but it's not going to move mountains. It's not going to win like the Booker or anything remotely literary. It's just like, you know, she writes for YA. Her audience is primarily YA. That's the kind of general push in The Poppy War. Same for Babel, although I do intend to read that later on in the year because it's kind of like dark academia fantasy. This one is no different. It is thriller. It is attacking things like, basically the publishing industry, and Twitter and own voices, wokeism and cancel culture. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was incredibly brave, very timely, very important to talk about this. And I think we're seeing the back of a lot of woke culture and cancel culture, and fortunately I thought it was really great for what it is. It's a good beach read, it's light-hearted, it's funny, whilst at the same time has some seriousness to it. I appreciated that she was talking about the fact that own voices don't have the monopoly on stories from their community or identity, etc. It also goes into sensitivity readers and how sensitivity readers are part of this woke culture, that stems from Twitter, but affects the publishing industry directly because they have to then pander to woke culture on Twitter, who will cancel them if they don't do things like own voices and sensitivity readers and X, Y, and Z. So it condemns a lot of the things that have become very popular and very well talked about within the book industry over the last couple of years. You know, okay, you're a white writer, so we're going to give you a sensitivity reader just to kind of tick a box. And the fact that the more boxes you tick on their diversity scale, the more likely you are to be published, and all of that kind of nonsense really that's going on in the publishing industry. But not to put all of the blame on the publishing industry, like it is driven by Twitter demanding and social media demanding that of them, demanding that they have these boxes checked and that they aren't seen to be discriminatory or racist in any way. They're scared, basically. They have to pander to the Twitter bullies, which is kind of how R F Kuang is phrasing them, and I do like that phrasing, because I think it is right that you have people on Twitter kind of sending death threats and threats of sexual violence and stalking, whilst also believing and saying that they are anti-bullying and, you know, inclusive and love everybody, and are standing up for other people. And then Diop's novel just felt unfinished. I gave it 2 stars because I didn't quite understand why it had been published. It really is not very impressive at all. It's a very slow burn to the point where it never actually gets going. The writing is fine, I mean, it's David Diop, but it is nowhere, it's in a different world to the quality of his At Night All Blood Is Black. They're not even comparable, and so I'm not going to compare them because I think that would be an insult to At Night All Blood Is Black. So it's the end of wrap-up time, which means there's only one thing left to do, and that is to decide who my runner-up book of the month is and who my winner for the month is. I think there's going to be no surprises when it comes to this one, but my best book of the month is 100% by a mile When We Were Orphans. No explanation needed on that one. And then the runner-up is Five Little Indians by Michelle Good. This was a joy and was a really, really solid, excellent characterization, excellent writing, a thoroughly enjoyable time, and yeah, a very worthy runner-up for best book of the month. So lastly, I will end this video just giving you my quick thoughts to wrap up this year's International Booker Prize 2023. As I predicted, Time Shelter won. I am very, very happy about that. I think the right man won. It became obvious from the start, as soon as Frederick Studman was announced as judge, and the fact that he is so high up within the Financial Times, and the fact that Time Shelter, you know, was the Financial Times best book of the year last year. It became very apparent very quickly that this would not only be a contender, but would be very, very strong in terms of winning the thing. And not just because of that, you know, it has had praise upon praise upon praise. You just have to open the front page of Time Shelter, see the people who have blurbed it, the amount of people who have blurbed it, the names, the quality of the people that they have put into the blurb of this book, is insane. There's just page after page after page of accolades and praise, and you could just tell on that alone how great this book was. And throw in on top of that that it would be the first piece of Bulgarian literature to win. The International Booker tend to like these sort of things where they're the first in something. You know, last year it was, you know, the first Hindi novel with Tomb of Sand, and now it's the first Bulgarian novel, and next year it'll be the first something else novel. They like a gimmick. I think it was the right winner. I expected it to win. It did win. I didn't do a reaction video because it would have been me going, yeah, told you so. Like, we all knew. Who didn't know at that point that Time Shelter was going to win? I think you all know that Whale is my favourite. It's one of my best books of the year. I had a thoroughly good time with this year's International Booker. I am hoping beyond hope that Booker in the summer is going to be equally as great. I have my fingers crossed. It's going to be a fantastic book prize season for me this year. Thanks very much for watching this wrap up. Remember to like this video if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will chat to you all in the comments down below very soon. Bye guys!